So, the latest of what's become perennial strike action by the Academic Staff Union of Universities in Nigeria, known as ASUU, appears to be nearing an end. For months, tens of thousands of students have been forced to sit at home, twiddling their thumbs while the hard-earned money their sponsors use to pay their fees is wasted. Well, now we're hearing that the epic 8-month-long nightmare strike may be over as early as next week as a result of a combination of factors, including a court ruling ordering the lecturers back to work, President Buhari promising some relief after the intervention of the House of Representatives. So how much does all this underscore the need to vote in leaders in 2023 who can start to do something about the state of education in this country? Well, for more on all that, I'm joined now in the studio by ASUU's Counsel, the respected constitutional lawyer, human rights activist, and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So basically, the courts have ruled in favor of the government. ASUU sought a stay of execution, then withdrew it, presumably through you. So is ASUU going to respect the court ruling to call off the strike?
I think it's important to clarify certain issues. Number one, ASUU was not in contempt of the court, of the order of the lower court, as the Court of Appeal recognized in the ruling, which is that once you are challenging the jurisdiction of a court, you are not bound to obey the order. That came out very well in the ruling because the court agreed with us by relying on the case of Mobile and Assam and others, and also rely on, other authorities, including Ariafe Babala SAN, who had treated this topic in his book. But having said that, it wasn't a victory for the government. I think it was a victory for the students who have been home for 8 months. Again, ASUU has made this point repeatedly that it is ready to call off the strike today if the government is prepared to sign the agreement produced by the BIGS committee. That was after the government had dumped the agreement prepared by the Jibril committee. And this agreement was ready since last July. And ASUU said, we're ready to sign. Government said no. And since then, government had not had any engagement with ASUU. But happily, the leadership of the House of Representatives came on board and met all the stakeholders and had made recommendations to the president, and I think ASUU is already beginning to see some indication that these matters are going to be addressed once and for all.
So the strike is not yet off, basically?
No, but we've been trying to get a copy of the order of the court since last Friday. Because I must have a copy of the ruling of the court for me to advise my client. Our advice had been ready, but we then need to put a sentence. Please kindly find attached the certified true copy of the ruling of the court. We didn't have that on Friday. We didn't have that yesterday. So we just got it this afternoon. So we're going to send a letter to ASUU today. And ASUU had already sent its officials to all the campuses to explain where we are, particularly with the intervention of the Court of Appeal and
right. But when you say explain where you are, you mean they've sent out their representatives to say prepare to return to work?
No. ASUU didn't ask their branches to vote.
Right.
As has been reported by one of the people. You don't vote over a court order. Yeah. But the point I'm making is that, and I can tell you, Charles, is the most difficult aspect of my work. Convincing striking workers to call off their strike. It's always very difficult for us. But again, when you have a court order before you, it's always difficult to maneuver. we can go on and on. I mean, I can tell you,
but let's
our options are not closed.
Yes, yes.
But we also, ASUU is also looking at other interventions. That this is the right time to review the whole strike, with a view to...
And to review the process of funding.
Yeah.
Because that's critical. This can't go on.
Very, very. I mean, for instance, in the budget of 2023 budget, there's been a significant improvement on the allocation for tertiary institutions in Nigeria. And I think this is remarkable. With respect to the controversial RTPIS, the government is also prepared to say, ASUU, let's have your own UTAS, and we'll see how we can accommodate, because the universities are different from the civil service, and I think other issues have been addressed.
Right.
Of course, there is the controversial issue of payment of...
Yeah, I was going to say to you, the no work, no pay thing. What's the situation?
In the case of ASUU, as I tried to explain, it's not like, doctors are on strike, and you say, oh, people are dying in the hospitals, please call off the strike. In the case of ASUU, if the strike is called off today, ASUU is going to ensure that the lost grant is covered. It's going to be a crash program for the students. There will be no holidays, there will be no weekends, they're going to teach them.
But that's almost penalizing the students.
No. The students are also anxious to go back to school and complete their program so that they don't lose the session. So once I'm going to work,
right.
The question of no work, no pay doesn't arise, because ASUU can simply go back. So since we're not being paid, let's start a new session. We should not be fair to the students. And that is why I understand the government is also considering this aspect of the strike.
Right. So you're confident enough, because you've been quoted as saying that the strike will be called off in a matter of days. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, who's been negotiating with ASUU and the government, as you said, says President Buhari is promising some relief, and ASUU is sort of on board as well. I mean, tie all that together for us.
Well, again, as I said, I'm very confident that ASUU will speak tomorrow.
Right.
ASUU has sent people around the campuses to let the members appreciate how far the government has gone,
right,
the intervention of the court, and the totality of all this will lead to a significant, decision that will be announced tomorrow.
Right. So
and we're also sending our own letter,
right,
based on the ruling of the Court of Appeal now.
So the demands of ASUU that they've made and have kept them out of the classrooms for the last 8 months, that is now, that you're now
being addressed rather belatedly, being addressed.
So you're
now
confident enough at this stage that you expect that ASUU, in its consultations with its members, would recommend a return to work?
Well, I know that ASUU members are law-abiding citizens.
So they will obey the court order.
I've sent my advice. I mean, I'm sending my advice.
And presumably your advice is to say obey the court order.
It's going to be difficult for me to say don't obey the order of a court.
Well, that's why I want to be clear that that's what your advice is. I remember an
incident when the late Chief Ganifa Eme and I had to spend about 6 hours trying to convince the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress. The president then was Comrade Adams Oshiomhole. But at the end of the day, we succeeded. Having regards to the fact that we operate under the rule of law. We cannot behave like the government that says, oh, we're not going to obey this order because of national security. ASUU cannot afford to say that, And that is why we are going to ensure that the intervention of the Court of Appeal, is factored in,
But is there a time limit in that order to return? In other words, that you must return to work by this date, or is it fairly open-ended?
Well, the court said that ASUU should return to work immediately. Again, like I said, we have just obtained a certified true copy of the order an hour ago. Now, I'm going to send the ruling to ASUU and expect ASUU to take its decision, as I said, latest tomorrow.
And what would be the consequences from a legal point of view if ASUU decides that it's not satisfied with what the government has done so far, and that it's not going to return?
Again, as I said, we do not want to go legalistic. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
There are options, domestically and regionally. I can go back to the same court, because the Court of Appeal is the last court on labor matters, trade disputes, and others. I can go back to the court and attempt to convince the court that, please, this conditionality was not prayed for. I can do that. I also can go to the ECOWAS court on behalf of ASUU. But again, as I said,
you want to have it resolved, basically.
We have to consider all the facts and circumstances and put the interests of students in focus. And that is very important in a matter of this nature.
Yes,
so that
I would agree
we
with you.
Taking these steps, I also can assure you as lawyers, we're also going to redouble our efforts to compel the government through the court process to ensure that all our standing agreements are implemented.
Is it time, though, for ASUU and for the universities to start looking at alternative ways of raising money?
You see, ASUU has always done that. It is now for the government to pluck up the will to address the suggestions by ASUU. For instance, I just look at two of them. I just want you to look at two of them. The TED Fund, which is the major source of executing capital projects in all the tertiary institutions today, was the brainchild of ASUU. It was ASUU that brought up that idea. And I remember in 1990, it was a big thing. How can you ask companies to contribute 2% of their profit? And we have to tell the government. At that time, these companies are recruiting graduates, and they haven't contributed a dime to their education. Therefore, you must give part of your profits. So we convinced the government. We drafted the decree under the Babangida junta. Today, it's been increased to 2.5%. ASUU is asking, who is paying this fund, this education tax? How many companies are paying? What is being collected? How is it being utilized? All that. I mean, for instance, the TED Fund leadership says, it's going to be building structures in geopolitical zone. I would say, by the way, no, that is not the purpose of the TED Fund. You are simply required to look at the fund and distribute to campuses and not to be erecting structures. That's contract, So ASUU is looking at. The other one, in 1992, ASUU also persuaded the government, federal government, you have abandoned certain properties in Lagos, which are wasting. Why don't you transfer them to the universities so that there will be a special fund for research and other projects? Now, those buildings, contrary to the agreement, are being given to individuals by the government at giveaway prices. For instance, you get a property in Ikoyi abandoned by the government for 50 million naira or 100 million naira. The following day, you take it to the market and collect 1 billion naira. So ASUU is saying, no, let us go back to that agreement. And that, I can assure you, from the information at my disposal, the government can, if the government can transfer those assets to the universities, we may be talking of about 500 billion naira. I'm serious about it. I mean, there was a government, I think the Olusegun Obasanjo regime, that sold the 1,004 flats meant for legislators in the Second Republic, or occupied by legislators in the Second Republic, to a multinational corporation, Which one now? A multinational corporation. UAC. I've never heard that anywhere in the world where a government will build houses for a multinational corporation. It should be the other way around. Or government compelling a multinational corporation to build half accommodation for a staff.
But given all these things that you've mentioned, which appear to be valid points, yes, is the story, because that's what the Nigerian people want to hear, is the story of perennial strikes likely to be different going forward? From here on, based on the agreements that you're seeing happening?
I think from this experience, we all have to go back to the drawing table and say never again. And my own position is that the government will have to be more proactive.
Right.
And the government will have to learn to implement agreements.
Right. And talking about government.
And the government will have to prioritize education.
Yes. Now, obviously, there's going to be a different government in 2023. How much is all this connected to 2023 and the need to vote in leaders who can start to do something about the state of education?
I am aware
country?
That the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, ASUU and other stakeholders are insisting that this time around, it's not going to be business as usual. They are going to put before the political parties and the candidates, what they're going to challenge them with respect to commitment, their commitment to revitalizing our comatose institution. They are really in a terrible shape. And those guys are going to be monitored. And support for politicians and political parties, for me, is likely to be anchored on the commitment and your program to fund education, prioritize education, and ensure that it's not just about university education. Right now, we're in trouble. About 20 million children are out of school. So you must have the political parties addressing these problems so that we're not building a future of illiterates. Now we're competing with Pakistan. India has left us behind in terms of the number of out-of-school children. And those are potential criminals if you push all those young people to the street. But what has happened, Charles, over the years,
very
briefly, is
briefly,
that we, the elite, have simply taken our children out of public schools. You have special private schools, special secondary schools. You take them to private universities at home and abroad. And I can tell you today, all the students in private universities in Nigeria are not more than 5% of the population of students in public schools.
So a very, very urgent situation indeed. And I'm glad that people like you, who are well respected and people listen to, are making those points stridently. Femi Falana, who is the ASUU's Counsel, the respected constitutional lawyer, human rights activist, and senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Handshake across the table.
Yes.
Lovely.
Thank you.